Hey everybody, Tom Judd here, IFMB CED Board Chair and privileged to be a part of the Founders Council of the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance. And we've got Mladen Poluta, my good friend, here today, talking about himself and the Alliance. So Mladen, tell us a little bit about your background as a clinical engineer, brother.
So thanks, Tom. Great privilege to be here and pleasure. So who am I? Very briefly, I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa. Of Croatian descent. I studied electrical engineering at the University of the Witwatersrand. How did I get into clinical engineering? So in my third year, I got a vacation job with a small company that is supplying and supporting critical care equipment. I was asked to do troubleshooting callouts to coronary ICUs at the public sector tertiary hospitals in Johannesburg and Pretoria. And it was really this experience that set me on the path to where I am today. Incidentally, my lecturer for the final year electrical machines course was Professor William Cormack, brother of Dr. Alan Cormack. Now, I'm not sure whether you and how many colleagues listening in know this, but Alan Cormack was a physicist who, during his time at the University of Cape Town, developed the back projection algorithm that is used to generate the cross-sectional views in computer tomography, and for which he, jointly with Godfrey Hounsfield, received the 1979 Nobel Prize in Medicine. So after graduating, I joined the same company and was initially tasked with R&D of an environmental controller for quadriplegics. But the highlight of my time with the company was an overseas trip in 1979, when I visited several of our manufacturer principals in Europe and attended both the Medica exhibition in Germany and the IFMBE World Congress in Jerusalem. When my role changed to that of a sales and service engineer, as is fairly common in South Africa, in the private sector anyway, I felt the need to move on and join the public health sector, specifically the Department of Medical Physics based at the old academic hospital in Johannesburg. The primary role of that department was to support the radiation oncology department at the hospital. A year later, I moved to the new academic hospital and got involved in a number of projects in the area of electrocardiology. While in Johannesburg, I got to work closely with the clinical engineering department at the hospital and helped clinical engineering develop a national footprint, as well as contributing to the launch of the National Higher Diploma in Clinical Engineering at the Pretoria Technikon, now the Tshwane University of Technology, and still the only tertiary institution offering a program specifically in the area of clinical engineering. In 1987, I moved down to Cape Town and joined the Department of Biomedical Engineering at University of Cape Town and Groote Hospital. Again, as many of you know, that is famous for the first human heart transplant that was performed there by Christian Barnard and his team. My initial role was as head of the medical electronics group, and I continued to collaborate with clinicians in cardiology and anesthesiology. In 1991, I attended the IONP World Congress in Kyoto, Japan, where I met for the first time both Dr. Joel Noble, founding president of ECRI, and Dr. Andrei Isakov from WHO headquarters in Geneva. So my Damascus experience came in 1994 with the Medical Research Council regional workshop on healthcare technology in the sub-Saharan region, subtitled Challenges and Collaboration Possibilities, as well as the MRC PATH International Conference on Medical Engineering and Computing in Sub-Saharan Africa. Both the events were held in Cape Town. I was facilitator of the clinical engineering theme at the latter event, and I was exposed to representatives of both regional and global clinical engineering, health technology management, and health technology assessment communities, and was made aware of the need for improved health technology management and clinical engineering in the African region and related capacity development. So since then, I've had many roles. I was chair of the IFMB working groups on developing countries from 1997 to 2003, and IFMB regional liaison to the African region from 1994 to 2000. I was privileged to be a member of the African Federation for Technology and Healthcare Executive Council from 1994 to 2000. That organization essentially was ahead of its time. It was funded by GTZ, and when funding for the AFTH ran out, essentially it folded. But that, in many ways, was a blueprint for what the GCEA is hoping to become. I also co-chaired in 1998 a National Steering Committee on Medical Equipment Management and Maintenance and Associated Education and Training. That report was submitted to our Department of Health and in a sense formed, again, a foundation for activities that were to come later. In 1999, with seed funding from the AFTH and the Flanders government, I launched the HTM program at the University of Cape Town with the postgraduate diploma in health technology management as the flagship offering. It is notable that most of the program participants came from a clinical engineering technician background, or what could be called BMET, and moved on to become senior managers in national or provincial departments of health. The UCT HTM program contributed to capacity development in the areas of clinical engineering and health technology management and related areas in 13 African countries. Since then, I have chaired, co-chaired, and participated in many conferences locally and internationally, served as short-term consultant for the WHO, the South African Medical Research Council, the Council for Health Service Accreditation of South Africa, our Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, for JICA, the International Cooperation Agency of the Japanese government, as well as the German NGO FACT and Bread for the World, where in 2006 we crafted a HTM Matters campaign. This is the brochure from that campaign. Still, 15 years later, very timely and very appropriate in terms of the essentials of both clinical engineering and health technology management, which goes to show that yes, time has moved on, but essentially, and particularly in low resource settings, the realities and the challenges are still the same. I had a 4-year part-time appointment with the University of Pretoria, specifically the Graduate School of Technology Management, and that opened up even more opportunities in terms of the potential for growth in clinical engineering and health technology management across fields such as asset management, project management, maintenance management, innovation, and so on. I'm now coming to the end of my tenure with the Western Cape Department of Health as Director of Health Technology. That tenure will end in September this year. And amongst other opportunities, I will again reconnect with the University of Pretoria, this time with its Department of Public Health Medicine. So Tom, I'm not sure if you'd like to get any more out of me in terms of that background or some of those activities.
Mladen, that's just very cool. This breadth and width of your and depth of your work, brother. Let's go to the next question. I mean, what do you see clinical engineering is and its main goals? Right.
So in preparing to answer this question, I went back to Cesar Caceres's landmark publication, The Practice of Clinical Engineering, to see what was envisioned or what the position was then. And I quite like the definitions from chapter 3 of that publication, where clinical engineering was defined as the application of the art and science of industry, in other words, technology, to healthcare delivery and clinical problems in medicine. So it was defined really as being application-oriented, as distinct from biomedical engineering, which in the same publication was defined as the application of the tools of mathematics and physical sciences to medical and biological problems, so more theoretically oriented. A previous professor of mine in biomedical engineering at the University of Cape Town kept reminding us that the root for the word engineering is the Latin ingenium, meaning talent, and ingeniare, meaning to contrive or devise. So at its most fundamental interpretation, I see clinical engineering as the creation and implementation, of course, of appropriate solutions relating to medical devices and systems, and the optimal application and utilization in the healthcare space. Looking at it differently, one could say that biomedical engineering focuses on anatomy, physiology, and pathology of the human body, while clinical engineering focuses on the virtual, admittedly, anatomy, physiology, pathology of the medical device life cycle. And now with the advent of e-health and digital health interventions, in fact, on all non-pharma health technologies. So that's my take on clinical engineering. Of course, it is a heavily invested term, but that is also why I see that GCEA has got a clinical role in providing clarity in terms of what clinical engineering is and what clinical engineering isn't. But I really see clinical engineering as a broad church of related roles, responsibilities, and activities, using primarily a systems approach. I mean, one could well pose a counter-argument to the widely held view of clinical engineering being a specialization within biomedical engineering. I see clinical engineering as having scope and practice that covers many different bodies of knowledge. And one of these could, in fact, be a specific biomedical engineering focus. One aspect that's troubled me, Tom, for many years is, and this came up in our discussions with our Engineering Council of South Africa, when we were trying to have clinical engineering recognized as a specialty within engineering for purposes of professional registration of engineers, engineering technologists, and engineering technicians, is to what extent clinical engineering really engineering. And in that, I see that interpretation of engineering being the one I alluded to earlier in terms of a creative approach to devising appropriate solutions to meet challenges and issues in the healthcare space. So I see an overlap with medical physics, with clinical technology, as it's known in Commonwealth countries, with hospital engineering, and with other fields of endeavor as well. And I think therein lies the excitement of working together as one team, global team, but also part of many local and regional teams, adding value to the healthcare endeavor.
Very deep answer again, Mladen. So in your 40-odd years in the profession, and from your country's perspective, how have you seen clinical engineering perhaps change? What are its main activities of CE professionals today?
Yeah, good question, Tom. And in fact, they haven't changed much. In the 40 years I've been kind of exposed to the South African clinical engineering space, because of the role that essentially has been defined for clinical engineering. The focus in both public and private sector healthcare has really been about the core clinical engineering, health technology management activities of planning, procurement, commissioning, maintenance, and both technical and user support. that has continued to deliver good value, and it was shown, I think, most notably during our COVID-19 pandemic response. My own directorate, so this is now the Western Cape Department of Health, public sector, of course. My team was responsible for the planning, procurement, the commissioning and support of all additional medical devices and ICTs, in fact, that were needed as part of our province's COVID response. So it was an extension of the conventional role, but I think the experience showed the value of really being on top of your game, of being masters of one's profession, recognizing the different roles and complementary roles that different clinical engineering practitioners play relative to one another, but also relative to their clinical and other service counterparts. So it's really being part of that integrated team. And I think the same would apply in the private sector. And it would also apply in industry, where industry also came to the party as part of our COVID pandemic response. And there was very close collaboration between industry and ourselves, admittedly with huge pressure on resources, with competition globally for limited essential equipment that was required as the COVID response. That said, I think the field is really ripe for venturing into new frontiers and opportunities, leading to new specializations. And here I'm excited that our national association, Clinical Engineering Association of South Africa, has joined the CED, because I really think that there are huge opportunities in terms of clinical engineering setting its own futuristic agenda, and adding even more value and value in new areas to healthcare delivery specifically, but also to more broadly to community wellness. So I see also clinical engineering perhaps prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic response and what we perceive already as the new normal, as a great opportunity for clinical engineering to really stretch its legs and in a sense move into the next phase of its development. And the same applies largely, I would say, to the African region. We have good collaboration through the IFMB Working Group for African Activities and other linkages with what is happening in Africa. And there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of recognition, certainly from the side of the clinical engineering and health technology management practitioners, of the importance of their role. What is lacking, I think, is still acceptance at the national government level and certain regional stakeholders of the value of clinical engineering. And I think that's where CED and as well as GCEA come into the picture, because they've got an absolutely vital role in terms of highlighting and promoting the role that clinical engineering practitioners can play as in African health systems.
So Mladen, we've heard this incredible journey you've been on, where you've engaged your head and certainly your heart. So today, though, the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, we like to call GCEA, why did you join? And I mean, share more of your heart today of how you think GCEA will really help international healthcare.
Thanks, Tom. So for me, it was really a no-brainer. I mean, I'm still a board member of CED, and proudly so. I think the IFMB CED has done incredible work down the decades with visionary chairs, and the latest being yourself, and you and your team have done incredible work over the last year, especially highlighting the great value of clinical engineering on the one hand, but also bringing together clinical engineering practitioners globally, particularly in the context of the COVID pandemic response. But I do believe that clinical engineering's time has come, as I've said. and it needs to manage its own destiny on the global stage. And to that end, I saw and I see the need for a new organization that can unambiguously promote and advance clinical engineering interests globally, and free from the shackles of competing interests, whether these be profession based or region specific. I'm also passionate about continuing professional development for clinical engineering practitioners and related areas of accreditation, certification and registration. And I see GCEA as being the vehicle that can successfully drive a global agenda in these areas. Also, by being a clear and unifying voice for clinical engineering practitioners globally, and by forging alliances with key partners, GCEA can help ensure that clinical engineering practitioners in their respective regions and countries have maximum impact on the health systems in which they serve, while also promoting and enabling continuing professional development of clinical engineering practitioners and related bodies of knowledge and practice. So I'm really excited about this new dawn, this new threshold, building on the shoulders of giants, as I've alluded to, Tom, where GCEA can become the new global family for clinical engineering, working together with partners and other stakeholders in fashioning out the future, if you like, the new normal for clinical engineering globally, mindful of regional needs that might not be the same for all regions, so respectful of different jurisdictions, different needs, even down to country level.
Well, I love the stories you told and who you are, and looking forward to serving with you in the Alliance. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Tom, and once again, thank you for the opportunity.